Yeah, off you go, Steve.
Okay, well, my name is Stephen Hankins, and before I begin this tying session, I want you all to know that I'm not a professional or an expert, okay? So you're going to learn a lot about saying goofy shit and breaking your thread today. About as much as I'll do for you. But it's 102 degrees here. It's hotter than hell, so it's good to be inside. So I'm just going to tie a few patterns for you, some of the basic stuff that I tie and fish most often. If any of y'all see what I know Derek and Britt, they see what I post on social media. It's typically the same dry fly over and over again. So there's some styles that you can pretty much just switch the size and the color and match any mayfly that hatches. And so that's what I find myself tying most often. So I like a lot of parachutes and stuff like that. But anyways, I'm going to quit jabbering and get my deal set up here. By the way, I'm doing this on an iPhone, and it's going to be a little bit blurry, so I apologize for that, guys. But like I said, I'm not a professional and never done this before, so a little bit nervous. But okay, let me try to zoom in here. There's my fly tying desk, by the way. I got my dad watching over things, making sure I do everything right. Get myself, see if I can zoom a little bit different on the zoom. So I guess I can't zoom in any further. So I apologize for the blurriness, but that's the best that I can do. So, all right. So I'm going to start off with a size 12. You guessed it, Derek, a parachute Adams. I just catch more fish on this thing than anything else. So how blurry is that? Is that pretty blurry?
If you put your finger by the hook, it'll come into focus. That's not too bad.
Not too bad. Okay. Well, I'll do what I can to keep it zoomed in and stuff. So, all right. And I can try it the other way too, with the camera facing from my view. So let me know if I need to try that. So I'm just starting off with Danville 6/0 waxed on a size 12 hook. Start my thread in the normal manner. And so this is how I learned the easiest way to tie a parachute without any extra contraptions or anything to hold the parachute post up straight. I just have some basic poly yarn here, and the way I just keep the whole hank together, and then I take my bodkin and I just separate out however much I want to tie for that one fly. Okay, so and then just snip it out.
Yeah,
the amount is not crucial. You don't want too much. If you get too much, you'll have a really thick post, and I like a little bit sparser fly. So I lay the material lengthwise across the top of the hook shank, and I will give the first wrap with a pinch wrap to secure it. 1, 2, about 3 wraps. And then so what I do is I lift up the material. Can you all see that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So I lift up both sides. I give a few wraps on either side of the post. This will make for a very strong, secure parachute post. Okay. So once I have that situated like that, I'm going to give a few securing wraps around the material. Okay, and then here's a little trick I found that can lock your thread into that material a little bit more so it doesn't fall out so easily. So grasp the material in your material hand and pull that thread nice and tightly, and that'll essentially bury it into the poly. Okay. So however much hackle you want to use is the height that you want to lay that thread base around the poly. I usually end up using from 4 to 6 wraps of hackle, sometimes 3. Okay, so I'm always aware of thread twist. And so routinely throughout any fly, I twist my hackle or my bobbin counterclockwise to uncord it. Okay. So we have a good, firm, secure parachute pose. As you can see, that really doesn't move much. So I will advance the thread back to near the hook point. Okay. Now I'm going to take some CDL. I use this stuff for majority of my dry fly tails. They say it's good for a lot more than that, but I don't know. I just haven't quite expanded my use of CDL beyond. So I determine however much material that I want to use, and then grasp it and pull the rachis away from the barbs. So that keeps the tips pretty much aligned. And then I learned this trick from Barry Ord Clark's videos. I always snip away the butt ends to make a cleaner tie-in. Okay, so now, and another thing, I tie on a peak vise. It's kind of a beefy vise, and I can keep my material hand up here on top of the vise right there. So that helps a lot. I said that I was going to buy a nicer vise when I wore out the peak, and that was about 12 years ago. So here I am still tying on it. All right, so loose wrap around. That looks like a pretty good for a tail. Okay, now I will go forward and tie down all the butt ends. I'll give a few more wraps up here, up at the front to help with the taper. Okay. Here's another little trick. Whenever the material gets in the way on a parachute, you can twist it and move it back out of the way. So that will help it from getting in the way as you wrap the rest of the fly. Okay, now let me find my dubbing. Again, this is what I call a parachute CrAdams. Instead of using a brown and a grizzly, I just use a Cree because it's one feather and it's a little bit less work. From what I found, it's equally effective. There's no Cree that has that same rich color as a dark brown and grizzly, but for my purposes, it works just fine. So here I have a little bit of natural gray beaver dubbing. And I'm just going to make a dubbing noodle on the thread. Okay. So now start right at the base of the CDL tail and work it up and work a little bit of a taper into it as you wrap it. And I got too much there, so I'll pull it down, adjust the diameter. And there we go. So there we have the body. Is that clear? You're clear enough to understand what I'm doing?
If you put your finger by the hook, it should come into focus again.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody else see that okay?
Yeah.
All right. I apologize, guys. All right. So I'm preparing the hackle, and you just strip enough to have a bare rachis. Okay. Now, here's I get a lot of joy out of tying dry flies, and I think it's because of the hackle. And that goes back to when I was a kid. I always wanted some good dry fly hackle, but it was expensive. My parents weren't going to buy it for me. So here I am catching up now and buying all this hackle I really don't need. But this is the magic part of a dry fly for me. I just get a lot of joy out of it. So if you want your hackle color to face up or down, that'll determine how you tie it in. So here I'm tying in the color facing me. Okay. And I tie it on the eye side of the post. Okay. 1, 2, 3 wraps to secure it. And you can see kind of how it's oriented there. Color facing me. Now I have that secured to the hook shank. Now I'm going to advance my thread to just behind the eye, and I will dub that bare hook area. I've always tied with superfine. It's a great dubbing, but it's hard to take off the thread once you have it on. So I find that with natural materials like beaver, muskrat, it's a lot easier to take it off. Okay, so there we have our dubbing. Just work that back to the parachute base. Okay. And there we have it. Now we're ready to wrap the hackle. So the way that I do it is I invert the hook. You get everything in between your fingers. You grasp it right at that intersection of parachute post and hook and thread. You have to orient the thread behind the parachute post so it'll stay put. So I'll show you what I mean. So loosen up your vise, invert the hook, and there it is hanging just like that. Okay. So now I will again manage my thread twist by spinning my bobbin counterclockwise. I'm going to wrap the bare rachis and secure it to the parachute post. I'm going to wrap it up and then back down. Okay. So I will get my bobbin out of the way. Now, here's the other part to determine how you want to orient your hackle, whether it's color up or color down, concave up or down. You can twist the rachis either way you want it. So that twist that I put in right there, I'll try to demonstrate it better. So that's color down. You can do the same way if you want it color up. Just the opposite. So, okay, so color down, wrapping the hackle. That's one. And you don't have to count it. I just do it. 1, 2, 3. That's 4 wraps. So here's where it's really easy to get your hackle a little bit messed up is when you try to jam one more wrap of hackle in that, it'll kind of push a lot of the barbs upward. So 1, 2 securing wraps, and then there we have it. Now I will snip off the rest of the hackle. Just like that. Now I'm going to use a hand whip finish right to the base of the post. One thing I like about parachutes is you can actually hide your work. You can hide your whip finish underneath the hackle. So I'll give it one more. Then here's the whip finish with my hand. So that's a 4-turn whip finish. It helps to have a rotary vise when you do that. So then grab my bodkin, seat the knot, and there we have it. Now, it's, as Davey McPhail says, it's up to yourself. However you want to, thread color, how you want to trim that off, it's up to yourself. So I tend to come in here and give a little angular cut to resemble a mayfly wing. Again, whatever you want to do. So there we have a completed parachute CrAdams. Okay, caught a lot of good fish on that pattern. It's a standard for me. All right, so would you like me to try the camera the other way, or is this adequate?
Stephen, can I ask a question here?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning. This is John here. I missed the beginning. Can you tell me what size the hook is and what type of hook, please?
Yes, sir. This is a size 12 Maruto D24BL.
Maruto, is that? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
And that's a fine wire hook. And it
Yeah.
has a little length. I think it's on par with the TMC 100, which I would say they have just a little bit more shank length without being a 2X long hook.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, sir. Thank you.
So,
Thank
okay.
you.
You're welcome. So we'll move on to another pattern. And just let me know if you want me to try to orient the camera facing my direction. I can do that too if that will help. So I've noticed I'm on an iPhone 11, and when I shoot a video just on the phone camera itself, it's pretty crisp and clear, but any live format, it's pretty blurry. So, all right, I'm going to move on to another one. And here we will tie a little gray drake. I normally tie these a little bit longer, but I'll just keep using this size 12 hook, which is fine. The size of the actual bugs in southern Colorado, where I fish a lot, they vary from a 12 up to an 8. They're a pretty big bug. All right, so this is going to be a parachute also, so it's the same procedure. I will determine how much of the post material that I want. I'll just separate that out to the desired thickness. And that's good enough there. Trying to do everything to where y'all can see it. So again, a lot of people tie in the parachute material with an X wrap as if they're doing a spent wing mayfly, diagonal to the hook shank. I find it's just as easy and just as durable to do it along the length of the hook shank. So again, lay it lengthwise, pinch wrap, 1, 2, 3 securing wraps. Now again, lift up both sides, put a few wraps in the front, a few wraps just behind. This both stands up the post, and it also, you have a little bit of a thread dam just up against the post, which that adds that durability. Okay, so same procedure. 1, 2, pull it tight and lock it in by pulling your thread. Okay, so your thread is locked into that material, and room for calamity is still there. Like, you can still pull it off, but it's just that the thread is dug into those fibers a lot. So it's a little bit more difficult to deconstruct your parachute. Okay. So a few more wraps behind and a few in front, just up against that parachute base. And again, there we have it. Good, secure, firm parachute post. So I'm going to use a Biot for the body this time. And with the Biot, you can't build a taper with the Biot itself like you can with dubbing. So I'm going to just take a few wraps back and forth and build a little bit of a taper. I don't think it really matters to the fish, but if you're going to tie a fly, you might as well tie it how you want it. So always being mindful of the thread twist. I've just, again, spun my bobbin counterclockwise to flatten the thread back out. Okay. So again, this is just the same basic format. You can match any mayfly from the largest Danica down to the smallest Trico or BWO. So the tail color, I have some other colors of CDL. I'm just going to keep using this dark Pardo. Okay. So I'm going to snip off the butt ends. Okay. Now we have that tied to the top of the hook shank, right on top and in line with the shank. Secure all the butt ends. And a little bit more work to add a little bit more taper. Okay. Now advance the thread back to the tail. So now I'm going to use a wild turkey Biot. There's a lot of little tips and tricks to use with these that make it more durable and just an overall better better product. All right, so I just select the Biot that I want from the strip. Typically, the longer Biots are right here in the middle. They'll be shorter on the ends. And so you can always, if you're tying for smaller mayflies, you can always go right there to the tip and find the Biot you're looking for. Okay. So select the one that I want and just pluck it out like that. Okay. Now I'm going to clean up that butt end. Now, so with wild turkey Biots, there are basically 4 orientations. This Biot is from the right wing of the turkey. You can tell by the curvature of the strip. I don't know if you can see it on your end, but there's a slight curvature. Basically, the concave is going to the right. So I like to tie mine with that ribbed edge showing. And so when you use the right side Biot, if you're a right-handed tyer, I'm probably going to confuse myself in trying to explain this, so bear with me. You have a better color on the outside of the Biot, and that's the outside, as opposed to the inside. Also on the wild Biots, you have a really nice barring that makes that black line when it's wrapped. So anyways, I'll show you what I'm talking about. To add durability to a Biot-bodied fly pattern, I think it's helpful to use an X-wrap to tie it in. So I'm not going to tie it in the normal manner by straight along the hook shank, but I'm going to use an X-wrap, and that'll add durability. Hold on one second. Well, let me get a different Biot.
The wild turkey, they're a lot longer, aren't they, Stephen?
Yeah, they are. They're longer. They're more supple. The ones that you buy, and I started dyeing my own just because every time I bought a pack of Wapsi or whatever, they'd always be very brittle. Okay, and so I don't know if it's because it's a wild bird or my dyeing process, but they're just pretty supple and they don't crack on you as you wrap it. And so as you can see, that's about as long as a Polish quill. So
How many different colors do you do, Steve?
12, currently 12. All right, so again, the X-wrap, and it really helps to have the camera on this side to see exactly what I'm doing, but one wrap over, and then I'm gonna come over and do another wrap diagonally to that wrap, so you formed an X. And so the reason I like to do this is because it puts that Biot in the plane of the wrap, rather than it going straight back to the rear. Whenever you tie it in that way, you form a crease in the Biot when you make your very first wrap. And so that crease could, lead to reduced durability. So this is just how I found I like to do it. Okay, so anyways, you have the little bit of the excess tip, and so you'll just wrap over that and clean it up as you normally would. Twist your parachute post to get out of the way so you can have an easier time. All right. So now I will put on just a little dab of super glue, and I'm not so convinced that super glue really fully sticks to this stuff. I haven't one, because if you tie one, go back in a few minutes later before you finish the fly and pull it off and just see what it does, if it sticks or if it doesn't. So, but this is called DAP Rapid Fuse, and I think it works as good as anything I've used so far. So I'm taking a hackle plier, just a simple hackle plier like that is the best tool that you can use to wrap a Biot. Okay. So wrap the Biot forward, overlapping turns, and you can widen the wraps however much you want to get a different effect. Okay, you can make them very tight, short wraps, or widen them out. You know, some biots, again, are long enough to wrap a long gray drake or a Danica imitation. But to do that, you have to widen the wraps. Okay, so I've tied off the biot. I'm going to snip it out. And there we go. So now I'll clean that up. Now I'm going to take some dubbing. Again, I'm using beaver dubbing. This is dyed in a dark gray. And you know, for a parachute thorax, you don't need much dubbing at all. Just a little wisp of dubbing is all you need. And that, and in fact, I'm not going to use all that I pulled out. I'm just going to put a little bit of it on the thread, create a dubbing noodle, and there we go. Okay. That's a little bit messy. Let me clean that up. Okay, so create a thorax. Again, you don't need much, and that's good enough for me. I think the purpose of the parachute thorax is really just to clean it up. I mean, functionally, it doesn't serve much purpose. The hackle and the tail float the fly. The dubbing is just to clean up your work. So let me find a hackle. I'm a hackle junkie, by the way. I've got more than I will use in 3 lifetimes. So here I have this little Skilton sandy tan done, just laying, it's a scrap, just laying on the desk. I'll use that. So again, clean up the base of it so you can tie it in. I'm going to wrap color down, so I will face the color towards me. Secure it in front of the post between the eye. Wrap forward. Now take your dubbing again. Apply it to the thread. And wrap backwards back to the parachute post. Okay, that's good enough. So again, the way that I choose to tie a parachute, you need to situate the thread and bobbin on the rear side of the parachute base. Grasp the whole thing, hook, thread, parachute post all in one hand. Invert and situate back in the vise. So there you can see it's perfectly free hanging, it's secure, it's good to go. So wrapping the bobbin back up to secure the stripped rachis to the parachute post and back down. So that's secure, tied, ready to wrap. Move the bobbin back out of the way and just start wrapping. Wrap down. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's good enough. Secure it. I usually use 3 wraps to secure about any material. Okay. Now you can clean up. You don't have to cut those barbs out, but you can actually clean them up with your thread. And I'll show you what I mean. Just like that. That one little wrap, put those barbs back in line with the rest. Okay. Hand whip finish. 3, 4. And there we have it.
Paul's asking a question there. Is it worth putting a single whip finish before you invert the fly, just in case?
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good idea. I've never had the need to do that, but anything you can do to, I mean, to something as simple as a single whip like that would be a good idea. That'll secure it more. And then, so I'll just trim off that excess post material, and there we have it. It's a gray drake. Those gray drakes.
When do you add the varnish? Do you add any varnish to the wraps at all?
I typically do, and I didn't do that on the first one, but I'll show you what I do.
Yeah, thanks.
Now I've fished them without any varnish at all, and I've never had them come undone.
Okay, you're
but
lucky.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what to say other than, yeah, I've been lucky. So, all right. So here's how I apply it, and you only need a small drop of it. So I just take a bodkin, and I'm using Sally Hansen,
Yeah,
whatever kind of stuff you get from the beauty store.
yeah, yeah.
So I just take the brush, get a small drop on the bodkin, and apply it right to the threads under the hackle on top of the dubbing.
Right. So you're doing that. You're not doing it underneath the shank. You're doing it on the side of the shank.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
So
thank you.
So basically right there is where I put that drop of.
Yeah.
So that'll soak into the threads nicely. It won't soak into the hackle or the dubbing. If you have an excess, just take your bodkin and, clear it out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So there's a parachute drake, one of my favorites. They're going off right now in southern Colorado and Montana. So, all right, I'm going to tie next a last chance cripple. This is a Rene Harrops pattern. It's one of my favorites. I never go dry fly fishing without it. I'm going to tie it on a size 14 Maruto D24BL. This is also a Biot body dry fly. I've just seen this fly work wonders when they've stopped hitting the parachutes or whatever other normal dry fly that I'm fishing. If I tie on a last chance cripple, often it does the trick. I've seen it move many brown trout from a long distance to take this fly. So starting the thread in the normal manner. Lay a thread base all the way down the shank. Snip out the excess. So this uses a little bit of a poly for a shuck. Here I'm using tan Zelon. Again, select however much you want. I don't use a really big tuft of it, just enough to kind of give it, I think they give a little bit more flotation. They give it that translucency. We think it looks like a shuck, but who knows what the trout thinks. But maybe that's not what it's about. Maybe this is kind of more for us than the trout sometimes, So spin the bobbin, thread management all the time. That's that's good enough right there, that length. So a few securing wraps. Now to keep the body diameter even, I'll just wrap this forward a little ways. And that's about far enough. Okay. Now I'm going to use wood duck fibers on top of that. And again, this is just to the original tying. All you need are 2. Okay. So I'm going to tie him with the curvature going upward. First, we got to put our thread in place. Okay. Now it also helps to split those fibers at this point. So take your bodkin, split them. Once they're split, you tie them in. They're easy to keep oriented how you want them. Okay. So I'm sure you can't see this minute detail that's going on here because of the blurry picture, but so there we go. And then a couple of wraps to keep them split, and there we have it. That's the tail. So now we'll snip that off and build a little bit of a taper going forward. Okay. Take the thread back rearward and start the biot right there at that point. So for this, I'm going to use what I named the color is brown drake. It's kind of a yellowy brown color. Clean up the butt end. I'm going to use the X wrap method to tie it in. One wrap. Wait, it flipped around on me. All right, so give it one wrap that way. Bring your thread across the first wrap, making an X, and secure it that way. Okay. So that puts that biot in the plane of the wrap, and it doesn't crease over itself whenever you wrap it.
Got it. Okay. Open this up.
Okay, hackle plier. Oh, I didn't add the glue. Let me do that real quick. Don't need much. In fact, I put a little bit too much on the last fly. A little bit of it seeped out between the wraps of the biot, but that's okay. A brush applicator would help. I just haven't found a glue with a brush that I think sticks. So, all right, so I'm wrapping forward, overlapping wraps. Now end it right about there because we have quite a bit of work to do on the front end of the fly. Okay. Tie that off, snip out the excess, clean up. Now the original pattern calls for a little ball of dubbing right at that point. Again, this is a Rene Harrops pattern. Rene Harrops from Henry's Fork. So we'll just put a little bit on the thread, make a dubbing noodle. Make it really good and tight so we can create a little ball of dubbing. Okay. I think you could probably get rid of that if you wanted to on the new, as you're tying it. You know, if you didn't have that dubbing ball right there, it probably wouldn't make much difference. But in keeping with the original pattern, I always add it. So now we get two CDC plumes. Here I'm using CDC from Cooksville, Steve Cooper. I bet many of you know him. Really good stuff. Okay, so we have two plumes. Now I just align them with the curvature facing away from each other, just like that. Okay. Now you don't want the forward facing wing to be much longer than the body. Okay, so I will tie in right there. Again, I just spun my bobbin for that thread management. Do a pinch wrap. Tie it backwards to that dubbing ball. And clip off the excess, but leave a little bit of a butt end to go over that dubbing ball. Okay.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to select a hackle. And what I have in front of me is just scraps on the desk. I tie so many dry flies that my desk is usually covered in CDL and hackle and dry flies. So I tie a lot more than I fish right now. I'm in a middle of a master's degree, working full-time plus. So there's not a whole lot of time to fish, but there is some time to decompress and tie a bug or two. So yeah, we'll just go with that. All right. So This is going to be a collar hackle, like on a traditional dry fly. I tend to tie with the color facing forward. So that's how I'll do it here. So I have the color facing up, and when I tie it in, it'll essentially invert like that. So another thing I did, you're always cleaning up the rachis. A lot of guys clip the barbs off. So, the clipped butt ends of the barbs will leave a little bit for the thread to catch on. I don't do that. I haven't found that it's a necessity. So I just strip it all off because it takes one step out of the equation. Okay, so that's tied in. Now I'll begin wrapping. Again, sometimes you'll have a hackle rachis or stem that wants to kind of do its own thing. You can really just twist it to get it oriented however you want it to be. Okay, so, oops, just almost knocked over the camera. Again, I'm no professional or expert, so just bear with me.
You're doing fine.
One, 2, 3, 4 wraps. So tie that off. Snip it out. Okay. Give another couple wraps over that butt end. Now we're going to bring our thread to the eye, and we want to stand up that CDC a little bit. So put a few wraps just right up against it. There we have it. So now I'll do my hand whip finish. Grab the bodkin and seat the knot. Nope. Now for the varnish or fingernail crap, whatever we're using. So just get a small drop on the end of the bodkin and apply it just right on the thread wraps. Okay, there we have it. That's a last chance cripple. The hackle, I have it a little bit oversized for this pattern, but it's not too much. This thing works on the surface once it's, once you fish a little bit and it's starting to sink just into the film. I've seen a lot of fish move from a long distance to take this under the surface, an inch or two. Just a really good pattern. Okay. You take a drink.
Has anybody got any questions for Stephen? If you have, unmute yourself, ask the question, and then remute. All okay?
All right.
What mate did you say your price was?
Just a second, Ivor here. I've only just joined the meeting. Stephen, was it a Biot body you were using there?
Yes. Yes, it was.
Great.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah. Good to see you, Ivor.
Yeah, you too, Stephen, and the rest of you guys. I'm just using my partner's computer, but yeah, I've only just joined. It looks great. Yeah, that Rene Harrops. Is that the last chance cripple?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Stephen, there's a tie. Yeah, it's very good. I love it. Yeah,
It's a great pattern.
it
Again,
certainly is.
the Quigley cripple, I've tied a few of these with a caribou wing, just to add a little bit of flotation, because Paul Slaney and I were always going back and forth on CDC. And so I love CDC until either what happens first, one fish or a few drifts, and then it's pretty wet,
Yeah.
I think deer hair or caribou especially is a very lightweight hair, and I like to use that. It floats really well. But
yeah.
All right, so moving on. Here's one thing, in a world of all these options, it's good to simplify whenever we can. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tie just a basic kind of a dub body soft hackle, and then I'm going to reuse that same hackle for nymph legs on a Biot nymph next. So, and again, you can use that same feather, get the most out of your materials that you can, and this is one way to do it. So I've started the thread. Again, this is just a really simple but effective pattern. I've got a little piece of wax here, so I'm gonna wax my thread a little bit. And this is just a wax that I make, beeswax, and this is gonna gross y'all out, but it's toilet wax. Don't take that the wrong way. The ring underneath the toilet that goes on the floor, that's what we use here. It's just a wax ring, so it's toilet wax. It really is. So. So here I have some muskrat. This is what I call rough muskrat. It's rough because it has all the guard hairs in it. You know, you can use it for your dry flies. I just prefer the clean beaver dubbing without all the guard hairs for my dry flies. But there it is. Just gonna make another dubbing noodle. I have the thread pretty sufficiently waxed, so just, you know, apply it a little bit more loosely than you would for that dry fly thorax. Okay, so kind of messed up there. Let me go back. And that's one thing too. You can always go back. You can typically go back and recorrect. It's really just kind of intuitive to keep going once if you made an error in your tying, but you can always just kind of slow down and go back and correct it. So I'm just making a kind of a shaggy body going forward. Okay. So here I have a partridge feather, also from Catskill. I'm going to take my hackle plier and grab it by the tip, and then work those barbs backward. Okay. Now snip off the tip, and now tie it in. Actually, let me start over. Okay, so that's all that I'm tying it in by, is just the very tip. I'm sorry that's blurry, but that's what I'm tying it in by. Okay. Now we'll take our hackle plier. Okay. We'll give that about 2 wraps. Tie it off. Snip that off. And clean it up. And there we have a plenty effective little soft hackle. Okay, super simple. I guess this might be a flimp. Whatever you call it, it'll catch a fish or two. I fish those for Caddis pupa, emerging Caddis. Tie that off. Okay. So there we have that. The varnishing technique, you don't need the needle on this one, since we're not trying to avoid soaking the varnish into hackle barbs and dub thorax. So just a little bit on the thread work.
Stephen, do you fish that under the surface or just on the surface?
Under. Yeah, I always fish them under the surface, typically on the swing. I've heard a lot of guys fish them dry with little you know, a little gink or whatever. But so there we have that. And so again, the reason why I wanted to show you this is because I'm going to use that same feather to now tie a Biot nymph. Okay, so I have a nymph hook, and this hook is a Sierra all-purpose 2312 BL. It's a heavy wire. Okay. So now I'm going to start the thread, work backwards. And Ivor, let me know if I screw up this pattern, okay?
No, you won't.
All right, so I'm taking this same scrap partridge feather. I'm going to use it for both the tail and the legs on this nymph. So to do that, just select however much you want for the tail. I'm just going to pull about 6 or 8 barbs. So there's our tail. Using those butt ends to help form the body. So I'm going to add a little taper here. And this takes quite a bit of thread work to do it this way. Okay. Now we're going to select the Biot. Here, I'll just use that same brown drake color. Select the one that you want. And again, the longer Biots are always going to be in the midsection of the Biot strip. Okay, so for my dry flies, my larger dry flies from 14 up, I'm typically going to start pulling from this part of the strip. And the shorter Biots are good for 16 and below on the butt and the tip of the strip. Okay, so it's a nice long Biot there. Now, it helps your tying tremendously when you clip off that scraggly end.
Stephen,
Yes.
your biots are so good. They're really wide. Do you not trim them at all if you're on a fairly small fly to almost like get 2 out of it?
Yeah, I do. If it's like you said, if it's a smaller fly, if I'm tying for a smaller red quill or a PMD or something like that, you don't need to trim the Biot on a larger fly like this. And especially on a parachute, because as you saw the way I constructed the parachute post, that thing isn't moving. So you can really jam the Biot up against it without, moving it, as opposed to like a Catskill wing. That's pretty susceptible to getting thrown out of track, So again, here's our X wrap. As you can see, that the second wrap lifts it up into the plane of the first wrap. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now a little glue if you want to use it. Okay, doesn't require much. So hackle plier. Okay, so the first wrap, and you're overlapping. Like I say, if you want a tighter, you can usually get a darker body when you tighten the wraps, because that black barring of the Biot, it puts them closer together. So as you can see, this is a very tight wrap, and the black barring essentially darkens the fly. Okay. or you can space them out and get more of that, the dyed color in between each wrap. Just like that. Okay. All right, clean that up. Now I'm going to tie in a turkey feather, more turkey. Got lots of turkey around here for the wing case. This is a modeled Ozark turkey feather. It's really easy to get too much for the wing case, and when you get too much, it compresses all of the barbs or all of the fibers, and it kind of makes it a little bit less of a neat wing case. So, you know, I'd say your thickness is maybe a little bit less than the hook gap. Okay. So now you have the outer side of the material, then you have the inside. So if you want that nice coloring, that nice modeling to show on your fly, then you would tie it oriented downward because it's going to flip back over itself. Okay. So also those butt ends will help you build a thicker thorax. Okay. Now I'm going to get some dubbing. Here I'm using this dyed brown muskrat. A little wax on our thread, and also thread management. Don't forget that. Spin the bobbin counterclockwise. That flattens it. Okay, the dubbing noodle's now ready. So we'll just dub our thorax, making it kind of overlapping wraps to build the thickness of it. Okay. So now we're going to take the rest of that partridge feather and use it for nymph legs. That's the excess from our soft hackle. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use the natural shape of it. I'm going to set it right on top. Just right on top, right in front of the dubbing and right behind the eye. I'm going to pinch it in with my material hand and do a pinch wrap over it. And there we have our legs. Okay. Now the wing case is also going to help them be divided and stay divided. Okay. Pinch wrap. And we'll cut out the excess and finish up, clean up the fly. Okay. That's a really good nymph. You know, it's again one of those all-purpose flies that you can fish in any size and any color, and I would say have the majority of your mayfly nymphs covered. Okay, and there we have it. That's a good, you know, it's not weighted, so it's a good dropper on shallower runs. Caught a really good fish up above Platoro Lake in southern Colorado with that. Drop below an elk hair caddis. That where I was fishing is about 10,000 feet elevation, and I didn't think there would be many fish above, you know, 10, 12 inches, but I caught a pretty nice fish, about a 16-incher up there. I'll never forget. You know, some of those fish you just kind of never forget, and that's one of them. So anyways, that's a good nymph pattern. Where are we at on time? Doing pretty good?
Yeah, you can go as long as you like.
All right. Well, I kind of thought about possibly making a bigger fool of myself and tying a red quill. And I'm a little bit more nervous because Ivor's watching. So I'm going to attempt to tie for you without screwing up a Flik's red quill. Okay, classic pattern. Classic Catskill pattern. So I have a size 14 Maruto D24 BL. And I'll just use the same thread color again. The thread color I don't think really matters that much. It's just up to you. I tend to use the same thread for most of the flies. Just whatever's right in front of me is what I use. So I'm going to start the thread, leaving that nice gap from the eye. Okay. Now I just remembered on this, we need to make a thread base that covers the entire shank. I don't like to tie anything directly to bare metal. So we'll leave that gap. Now we'll take a wood duck flank feather, natural lemon wood duck. And this is just kind of a hybrid technique of the way many people do it. So I'm going to clip out the middle. And then too, if you can always save these little clipped ends for your last chance cripples or whatever other pattern you want to do with them. So I tend to keep those around on the desk too. So as I have it now, it's going to be a little bit too thick of a wing for a size 14. So I'm going to take about a third of that, strip it back, and that's what we'll use. Okay, again, lemon wood duck comes at a premium, so save all the scraps for other flies. I do have a whole wood duck pelt on the way, so I'm pretty excited to see that. So there we have it. That's going to be our wing. Okay, so holding it by the very butt end, I'm going to fold both sides over themselves. Okay, and then that's what we have after we do that maneuver. So that's going to be a little bit too long, so I'll adjust it to about that. So here again is the use of the pin trap. I think the pin trap is one of those techniques. It's kind of hard to explain how to do it, but it's really crucial on setting materials and keeping them where you want them to be. So pin trap, take about 5 wraps to the back, and then we'll clip those out. Clip them at an angle, and that'll help you build the body taper. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stand the wings up while I'm here. Again, I've just spun my bobbin to manage that thread twist. Okay. I'll give it a few more wraps to stand them up. So now we want to split that into two portions for the wing. A lot easier to do on a size 12. So I've split them how much I want. I know you probably can't see what I'm doing, but I split them. I put 2 wraps between, exit over, put another 2 wraps, and there we have our wings, Catskill wings. Okay. So what I was referring to earlier, those wings are pretty easy to push forward whenever you butt anything up against them. So whereas that parachute post, it's a lot more durable, and you can kind of just, you know, jam anything up against it and it'll stay in place. So I've taken the thread back and I'll tie in the tail. Let's see, let me find the right feather for this. I probably should stick to tradition and find a gray blue dun. If I can find one. Well, it's blurry enough y'all can't see what I'm doing anyway, so I'll just take a badger. How about that? Okay, so we'll just select a good amount of barbs. I'm going to say that's maybe 10 to 12 for this size 14. Clip off the butt ends. A little bit too long of a tail. I have too much material, so I'm going to shorten it. Okay. There we have our tail. We have a taper that's already built in. And I'm going to grab a stripped quill from a Rhode Island red rooster. It's been soaking. So you soak it so it's more pliable. If you don't soak it, the red exterior will work itself off as you wrap it. So that's the whole purpose in soaking it, so it's not brittle. Okay. Now I'm gonna again spin my bobbin. I want a flat, smooth surface on which to wrap that quill. And we'll stop it right about there. We'll give ourselves enough room to tie off and tie in the hackle. Okay. So just take your time on this, touching turns, moving forward. Try not to leave any big gaps. Of course, those gaps and all the other errors that you made really appear when you try to take a nice photo for social media. So just going to take my time, make sure each wrap touches. And at this point with the quill, it starts getting pretty wide and thick. Okay. I'm going to do one more wrap. Okay. I'm going to give it 4 turns to wrap off that thick quill. And there we have it. That's the body. Okay. So thing is with these quills is you need to coat the body to protect it. So I'm going to use the same Sally Hansen. Okay. You don't need a lot, just enough that'll cover the entire quill and soak in. Again, you can do this after you've built the fly, and that's fine. Just doing it at this point, you have to be pretty careful to not touch it. Okay. So I'm going to use a Dun Grizzly hackle for this, really just because I already have it on the desk. I'm going to make the hackle look like that, and then I'm going to strip it clean. Now for a collar hackle, I don't really do this on my parachutes, but for a collar hackle, I find that if you take so this is the side, I'm going to wrap basically like this side is going to wrap first. Wherever you make your first wrap, that is the leading edge. And so if you clean that up a bit, it'll just kind of produce a little bit of a cleaner fly. So you can see I've just stripped about maybe half a dozen more barbs on that end. All right, so tie in the bare rachis. Okay, now jump the thread to the front of the wing. Okay. Now, I tend to wrap my Catskills a little bit too thickly sometimes, so I'll try to be conscious of that. So that's 1, 2, 3 wraps. Now, the 4th wrap needs to be right up against that wing to help it sit back. Okay, and we'll tie that off. Okay. Now I'm going to clip out a few of those barbs. Okay, now this would finish.
Nice to see somebody using their fingers instead of a whip finish tool.
Yeah, you know, that's how I was taught. And honestly, I've tried to use a whip finishing tool and I couldn't figure it out. So I just kept doing it how I've always done it with my fingers. So
I can't use any of them, and I've tried all of them.
yeah, they're a little tricky. But there we have it. That's the Flik's red quill. Classic pattern there. So we actually do have a mayfly here that we call a red quill. So we have the fly pattern red quill, and then we have what we anglers refer to as the red quill mayfly. If any of you have read or watched anything or read any Gearrock, he refers to AK Best a lot. And so AK ties his parachute red quill, and that's really what kind of led me to the Biots. Is I didn't have any Rhode Island red feathers at that time, and I thought that a Biot would be a pretty sufficient substitute for that. And so I think it is. Again, it's not true to the original pattern, but it's a good material. So there we have it. That's the red quill.
Stephen, what thread do you use, please, and what strength?
Yeah, I've been using throughout this session. I've been using Danville's.
Yeah.
70
Okay.
I've started using this, and I don't know if I like it or if I hate it, but it's Simplify.
Simplify, yeah. Okay.
I've been using that for some of my hair wing patterns because it does lock in pretty well. You don't have to use as much pressure with it. It doesn't stretch like UTC or Danville's does. Again, it's good for that. That's all I'll say. It's good for a hair wing because it works well with hair and locking it in nicely, but it's also very slick and it's kind of hard to cut. I'm just kind of tying with it to figure out if I like it or not. So
I think it says Nano Silk 300. What is that? 300? No, it can't be denier, can it?
30D.
30D. It is 30 denier then.
It's an 18-aught 30.
18-aught, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. I think we've had some correspondence from you about Danville's before. I seem to remember a few weeks or months ago that there was some discussion about the threads used, and I seem to remember. I use Danville's a lot for tying deer hair flies.
Yeah.
Not muddlers, but deer hair flies when I'm tying carp flies, because it grips the deer hair well. It doesn't cut through so much. Anyway, that's what I found.
Yeah, that's right. And in fact, I'll go ahead and tie one more or so. I was going to tie, while I have the hair out, I'll show you how I do basically just I've been tying these. They're kind of they're an all-purpose pattern. You can use them for a stonefly, a big caddis, probably work for a hopper. It's a big, and I'm not going to tie it this big, but it's very basic. It's just a deer hair wing, dubbed
Yeah.
body,
Uh-huh.
antenna. Who cares? I mean, it's just for looks, really. But I'll tie one of those, and I'll use.
What's that bobbin that you use?
This bobbin is a TMC double arm bobbin. It's really smooth. It's a very, very nice bobbin. This is one of those deals where I wouldn't have paid that kind of money for this on my own, but my wife bought it for me because she remembered me talking about wanting one, and so she bought it for me for Christmas. It's about a $70 bobbin.
It's
but
nice.
it's very nice. It's extremely smooth. You can really adjust the tension well on it to get it right where you want it. It's a great bobbin. But then on the other hand, I also use a Dr. Slick bottom of the barrel. That's fine too. I like those too. So all right, I'll do one more. Now I tie way too many flies, like I said. So if I'm past time and we need to cut it short, just let me know. So I've attached my thread base on the hook. Again, this is a size 12. I'm going to spin my bobbin back to flatten the thread back out. I'm going to wax the thread for a dubbed body. So again, I use a lot of muskrat and beaver. It does have some natural water repellency, and I made a little video clip about that because I was dyeing some beaver. And before you dye material, you need to soak it, you need to saturate it. And so when you put like a bundle of beaver fur under water, the water just repels off of it. So it's pretty neat. So it's a good material. Obviously, any dry fly, all dry flies are destined for wetness. Any dry fly is eventually going to end up underneath the water surface. But we can use materials that have flotation properties and tie our dry flies with surface area to stay on top. But again, I think we get a little bit too wrapped up in the minutia of our material, like whether the hackle is really stiff or where it's a little bit softer. I think we fly tiers tend to overthink that type of stuff. So I'm going to overthink it, and I'm going to use this beaver dubbing here. I'm going to add a little bit of a taper moving forward. Okay. So there we have the body. Here, I've just been using this nice patch of mule deer. If anybody doesn't know, a mule deer is a large deer in the western U.S. in the Rocky Mountain region. They have these really big, long ears that look like the ears of a mule. So that's where they get their name. But this hair has a nice amount of flare to it without having too much flare. It packs down pretty well. So I'm probably using, a good bundle. Maybe I don't know, less than the size of a number 2 pencil. I'm gonna brush out the fuzzies. This is a really space age tying tool here. This is I guess a mustache comb you get from the drugstore. So brush that out. That hair is going to pose a problem, so I'm just going to remove it. So now I'm going to stack it. Let me find my stackers. The other day, when Paul Slaney was giving a demonstration, I really liked what he talked about tamping the stacker at an angle. because when you do it at an angle, that aligns all of the curvature. If there's any curvature to that hair, that aligns the curvature in the same plane.
That was a good evening, that was.
Yeah, it was. So we have one hair with a messed up end. So there we have it. That's the, I wish I could get a better picture for y'all, but that's the wing. So another thing that I like to do is measure the length of the wing and then clip the hair before you tie it in. Okay. It just makes for a little bit neater of a head. So I'm going to give it 1 and 2. I'm going to leave some clipped ends for a head like on an elk hair caddis on this one. So I basically made 2 tie-in points, one right against the dubbing and then one a mill or 2 forward right behind the eye. So pull it down like that. Put a few wraps in those butt ends to flare it. Now I'm going to come back to the rear and do the same thing here. Now you can tighten up. And this is where, this is where the discussion of Danville or Simperfly Nano Silk comes in. It's how much pressure can you apply without breaking the thread, essentially. And deer hair, I mean, it, as we all know, it can spin around the hook on you. And so, but here on this pattern, we're not tying in a singular spot. We are widening the tie-in, and see here we have a gap. And so that makes it that the surface area that you've tied the hair in and onto the hook is greater. So that'll add to the durability of the wing. It's not going to spin around on us. Okay. So I'm going to clean that up. And I'm going to pick a hackle. And let's see, we'll use this little scrap on the table. We all know that Cree sucks. Cree does not float your flies at all. It's ugly. It stinks. I don't know why people pay so much money for it. So we're going to clean that up just like on all of our other patterns. This is going to be a collar hackle. So as you can see, I've stripped the butt ends the same way. Okay, I've got a little bit too much rake, so I'm just going to snip that out. Okay, tie this in. Give that about 3 wraps. And my wing just spun. So I did make myself a fool on live tying demonstration. So we can go back in and tighten that up. And that was not a very good example. So maybe we should be using Nano Silk after all.
As long as it catches fish.
As long as it catches fish, right? Or ends up in a tree where it belongs. Okay. Okay. Made a little bit messier hackle there, so I'm gonna clean that up, and then I'm also gonna trim the bottom of the hackle so that rests right in the film. Okay, or right on top without standing up with that collar hackle. So, anyways, that'll produce some fish. We have the caddis, we have the spruce moth in parts of the Rockies. I mean, it's really just the general attractor pattern, a small hopper. That's another thing where maybe we overthink what we think the fish perceive. It's just a morsel floating on the surface when they're looking up. So that's a good pattern. You can tie that with a Biot body. Another, another reason why I like using Biots, I like using materials that dry out easily. And a Biot is one of those. It's a slick, hard-bodied material, and just a quick shake and loom top ride or whatever you're using to dry it out, it's dry. You don't have to work on it too hard like a dubbed body or a CDC or something like that. So yeah, that's really about all that I had planned to tie today. Do we have any questions?
I've got one, Stephen. It's me again. Sorry about that. John here. If you don't have this mule deer hair, what else can you use instead?
Yeah, mule deer. I've added, and I'm not here to give you all a pitch, but I have this little material company called MAGPIE Materials, and
Right.
so whitetail deer. This is a strip of CrAdams hair.
Yeah.
It's a short body. It's a short hair with a fine abrupt tip. Whitetail deer, mule deer, roe deer, I think, smaller coastal deer, just whatever kind of deer, whatever hair has a flare to it.
And you said it was short fibered, was that right?
Yeah, right. So that really applies to smaller patterns. So a CrAdams hair, it's really does the hair flare where you want it to flare. That's what
So it's got to be flared. You've got to be able to flare it then.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
That is the surface area that it does have a flotational property because it's a hollow material.
Yeah.
It just does the hair flare.
Yeah.
And then the CrAdams are generally smaller, and so you don't want a hair that has a really long tip because that tip, the really skinny long tip, isn't going to flare. So that's what the CrAdams and Caddis hair is all about.
Do you sell the mule deer hair anyway?
I do. I haven't put it up on the site yet. Again, I have these pieces that I'm working on. I haven't figured out. I like selling them in a big long strip, but I want to get them.
That's a lot of hair.
Yeah, that's about, that'd be a nice 20-incher, so that'd be a big fish. But I'm gonna probably cut them up into about 6 to 7 inch strips. So,
Cool.
But yeah.
How much would you sell them for then? How much would you sell those strips for?
I've been selling a 9-inch by 4-inch strip of quality CrAdams hair for $25.
Right.
Which is really about on par with where you get it from anywhere else. It's just a bigger piece.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to turn this into a pitch. So
No, that's fine. That's fine.
That's fine.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Stephen, Rune is asking, could we have pictures of the flies on the WhatsApp group or the Facebook groups?
Sure.
With possibly a list of materials and description?
Yeah, we could absolutely do that.
Magic.
What's the name of that last one you've done, Stephen? That mule hair one. What did you call it?
I don't. It doesn't really have a name. It's just it's just kind of a cross between an elk hair caddis and if you know the Clark stone and an American stonefly pattern with that collar hackle at the head. It's just kind of a cross between several patterns that I've tied and fished, and it works.
Just call it a mule deer caddis.
I was about to say something like mule deer caddis. Yeah.
That's
Good idea. Yeah. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for tonight, Stephen.
Yeah, that's been really good.
Yeah, really good.
Yeah, great time, Stephen. Great time, mate.
Thank you, Stephen.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. And